Ladies and gentlemen, would you welcome please Fianna Fáil leader Micheál Martin. You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
I was watching our last encounter during the week just to refresh the memory from 4 years ago.
Wow, very fast.
It like a blink in a bat of an eyelid. 4 years ago, and you were talking about rescuing the party from extinction. How's it going?
It's going well enough from that perspective.
Is it?
Absolutely.
You're still there?
I think that debate is over. The party has a future and will do very well into the future. Over time now, obviously. It's not going to happen immediately, and I said that at the time 4 years ago. I think the most interesting thing that has happened really has been the introduction of new people. Particularly, I think the local elections witnessed that in terms of a new generation of politicians coming in, which I always saw as an objective. Because we had lost out in previous elections and local elections, and of course we had a seismic defeat in the general election of 2011. We also changed the party and how it works. We wanted to give more power to the members of the party. So we have 20,000 members signed up annually now every year. There's a one-member, one vote. I mean, tonight in Sligo Leitrim there were 600 people turned up at a convention to select Micheál and Mark McSharry for the election there.
I suppose that...
and the point I would make then, in addition to that then, you know, at the next Ardèche next week now, we'll give the members a power and a say in electing the next leader of Fianna Fáil. So we're trying to give more say to the grassroots, going back to the communities, going back to the members on the ground, so that they can have a greater participatory role in policy. And that's ongoing work.
And that's part of what as you say, your ongoing project.
Yes.
So how can you explain then what the mystifying fact that for Fianna Fáil is that you can't seem to get the party over 20% in the polls? You just can't, and it's poll after poll. It's not just one or two. It's every poll. You're stuck. It's stasis.
Yeah, it doesn't faze me at all, because last May we had a real poll. It was actually an election. And we got 25.5%. And the week before that, the polls had us at 21%. And I think we need to be very careful about the polls and cautious about them. I remember the famous, you know, when Eamon Gilmore was going to be Taoiseach, that was based on opinion polls 6 months before the last general election.
So you dismiss
that had Labour at 30. I don't dismiss them.
Do you not?
I think they're an important guide. But don't be fazed by them to the extent that we end up talking about nothing but polls. We should be talking about substance, about issues that people on the doorstep all the time. And I think some commentators, not for you, but generally politics, political analysts, I mean, all the interviews I do are always about polls.
That's because between elections, it's all we can go on.
It keeps people going, you know, in terms of the commentary.
Well, it does.
To a certain extent, and I think it might bore a lot of people out
But very often the polls are right and sometimes they're wrong. But look, that's just a fact of the matter. The poll
and we have challenges. I'm not saying, you know, when I say, I mean, I can't be guided by the polls, because you couldn't lead a party on the basis of a poll every month. You know, you have to really look at it in terms of ensuring you get good people through, in terms of candidates, and having a proper policy platform to put to the people. So
you fight the fight without, but there's a fight within. Fianna Fáil is a small parliamentary party now, and yet within that you have, you're fighting them on the beaches. You have Eamon O'Queeve, who turned around and said that just over 2 weeks ago, to quote him, he said there was an absolute collapse in self-belief in the party. An absolute collapse in self-belief. That's a big, big expression coming from Eamon de Valera's grandson.
Yeah, it is, and I wouldn't agree with Eamon on that. But I do. I mean, I accept Eamon's commitment, his dedication to it, and his sincerity.
Do you accept his point?
And his sincerity. I don't, in the sense that I mentioned the 600 who turned up tonight. 1,200 went to the Kerry convention on a Sunday.
So where's Eamon coming from? Is he deluded?
I think he wants us to do more. He wants the party to achieve more, and that's an understandable aspiration. And I think you made a good point. You know, when you look at the Fianna Fáil parliamentary party today compared to yesteryear, so to speak, when I first came into the party, there could have been 80 to 90 people in a parliamentary party room. You suddenly go into a room after a general election and there's 30 people.
You can nearly share a taxi.
Plus. So that is in itself a big change, and that brings about a different dynamic in terms of how a parliamentary party works. And I myself also would have been, or I am a person who tends to allow a bit, more latitude. I don't do it to Sinn Féin way. I don't mean that in a partisan way. I actually believe that there's always going to be, in the modern world, people understand people are going to have different perspectives. You can't suppress that all of the time.
Okay, so you're open to debate, and even if that's somebody saying that there's a collapse of self-belief, that you're open to that. But just as from at a human level, even beyond the politics, and you're there struggling to rescue the party and make it bigger and trying to get above 20%, whatever it might be, and you read the paper and you see Eamon O'Crieff saying, collapse in self-belief. Do you think, oh, here we go again? What do you think?
You might even do something stronger than that when you read it first.
Like what?
I'm not going to tell you.
Is that how you feel, though?
No, but I mean, Mary might say to you, look, did you read it? Just in note this morning.
What do you say?
What is it this time? And so on. But again, I was reading about Ed Miliband during the week, and it was uncanny. There was an article in The Guardian about his 4-year journey to the election. Absolutely uncanny in terms of the similarities. In terms of the ups and the downs and the kind of the negatives that happen.
He's more likely to be Prime Minister than you are to be Taoiseach, isn't he?
But he's doing very well, but no one saw that for the last 4 years.
Okay.
And everybody said he was on the road to nowhere, and it's changed. So I think it's the volatility of politics at one level, but also the sense that if you're on a road, you've got to travel with some degree of self-confidence and certainty on that road, understanding that there's going to be hiccups along the way, challenges along the way, but knowing what your end destination is.
I was wondering now, as you mentioned Mary, did she turn around and say, did you hear what Sean O'Farrell said, your chief whip, when he described recent poll results as depressing and bloody demoralising?
He didn't say it.
He didn't say it?
He didn't actually. No, he didn't actually.
So where did that quote come from?
It was reported. If you looked at the Independent article at the time, by the way, it was the bank holiday weekend. It happens every bank holiday. 6 months on a bank holiday, I'm under pressure. There's going to be a leadership challenge. Yes. Work that one out. But that happens.
So it's your annual bank holiday leadership challenge report that and you laugh at it. You seem to be making fun of it.
Well, it's not that you'd like to have the bank holiday without it in a way, but you get used to it.
Okay.
But the bottom line is
that wasn't an accurate report of it.
No, and I think it was reported then on the Morning Ireland or whatever that he had said it, and I can understand why, because it was that quote was from an anonymous person, but it was right next to Sean O'Farrell's previous quotation.
Well, if that's incorrect, I would apologise to Sean.
And it is. And Sean rang me to say.
Okay, so let's strike that then from the record and move on to the Carlow-Kilkenny by-election, which is coming up May 22nd.
Yes.
Do or die for your leadership?
No.
Why not?
It's a very. I mean, I've been in Kilkenny. I've been in Carlow. I've been on the doorstep.
Yeah.
You've got to know about hurling, right? Absolutely, in Kilkenny. I mean, and they're wonderful. It's warm.
But and you from Cork?
They keep reminding me of that and their recent successes and so on like that. And we've a lot to learn. I'm humble, humility, and all the rest of it. Bobby Aylward is a very good candidate for us. He's rooted in the community. His club, his 2 sons on the Ballyhale Shamrocks team who won the All-Ireland Club Championship.
If he loses?
If he loses? I think I've looked at the by-elections as part of the rebuilding and renewal of the party. We have created the platform to win general elections from the by-elections we've already had, okay? And I think, but we're going in to win this by-election. Yeah. Make no mistake about that. As I said, Bobby's a strong candidate. The Aylwards have a strong commitment and
but you won't resign if you don't win.
And that doesn't arise
just clarifying that more than anything else.
And the issues on the doors are interesting. Okay. I mean, people are feeling a lot of pressure. They don't feel the economic recovery has come to their locality, to their region. There's a general sense that the regions are being left behind, that it's a very sort of Dublin capital-based recovery and so on.
I think people would say that in Donegal.
Yes, they would, and it's a very big issue outside of Dublin.
Briefly in the Carlow-Kilkenny, of course, one of your councillors there left Fianna Fáil to join Renewa. Was that another Mary in the newspaper morning for you?
It was disappointing. No, because we had got a tip off that it was on the way.
How did you feel about that?
I was disappointed because we had put a lot of work into Paddy, and I did a lot of work in the local elections. We focused exclusively on them for about 2 years, selecting young people in addition to the councillors we already had. Printing the leaflets, literally going on the doorstep.
Did you feel slighted?
No, I think, look, I'm a realist. I'm philosophical about these things. It will happen. Even though Paddy would have supported Bobby and said he was going to support him, obviously he sees an opportunity here in terms of the by-election and the new party and all of that. And, one can't hold grudges in politics or anything like that.
Let me ask you, speaking of which, would you welcome Mary Hanafin as a candidate in Dún Laoghaire?
Well, I've no difficulty at all with Mary Hanafin as a candidate. She's going to go forward. So will Kate Feeney. There'll probably be a rematch.
Who would you rather see representing
I'm not endorsing one candidate or the other. I think as a leader I can't do that.
Can you let the two run? Is it two on the ticket?
Cormac Devlin's there as well then. He's another candidate that's coming through.
That's going to be a busy poster.
And Jennifer Cuff is not running, but that's an example of what happened in the locals for us. Suddenly you have people, like last general election, people weren't even going forward.
I appreciate that, but just to establish, because there's interest in this and in Donegal, and it's not just a Dublin thing, do you want Mary Hanafin to be part of the Fianna Fáil
what I would say to you is I think we need a blend of experience and youth, and we need an injection of new people as well into the party. Of that, there is no question. But when you look at we had over 400 odd candidates in the locals. We only had about 6 former TDs went forward. I think in the general election we'll have about between, say, 60 and 70 candidates, depending. I think about 3 of those will be former TDs. So sometimes that...
Could you name them for me now?
I won't. I couldn't. Well, there's one tonight has been selected as Eamon Scanlon in Sligo, for example, with Mark McSherry, Senator Mark McSherry.
So you're not ruling out
So I'm saying, basically, I think the whole argument about youth versus older people, if you like, is overstated at times, and we do need a blend.
Yes, so in that blend, you'd welcome Mary Hanafin?
I'm not endorsing any candidate of that. I think it wouldn't be fair to other candidates. The convention is going to happen.
You're happy to see her as part of the mix?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's
absolutely,
it.
Yeah.
But just that thing about the old guard, and we talked about this 4 years ago, Micheál, and the lack of forgiveness among Irish people for Fianna Fáil. I know you mentioned the local elections and so on, but and again, if we just wonder about that, and again, I put it to you the last time, that you were there, you know, you were part of that cabinet that brought this country to its knees, and it's kind of, you find yourself maybe in this futile position every time you stand up in Leinster House and say you're doing the wrong thing, we're only cleaning up your mess. I mean, do you find that maybe until you go, the party can't move on because you're too much part of the old regime?
I don't feel that. I mean, on the doorstep, certainly not.
No.
Because people, and we did wrong, you know, and we did get things wrong.
Yeah. But
people are very interested in solutions, and but the most important thing is we learn from those mistakes and use that for the benefit.
But people are moving towards, aren't they? They're moving towards Sinn Féin. They're sticking with Fine Gael. If you look at they're maybe moving away from Labour a little bit, but they're not joining you, returning to you in any big numbers. You know? That must be of concern to you.
We got 25% in the last election. Sinn Féin got 15.
Yeah.
You know, those are facts.
Yeah.
But I'm not complacent about that. I know it's a different election, but those are the facts.
Yeah. You're hanging on to the local election figure, aren't you? I mean,
it's just a fact. I mean, it's just there, and I think
it's dear to you.
I think it's important. It happened.
No, I
put a lot of work into it, you know.
Yeah. No, I get that.
And I think, but the point I was making is people are solution driven, Ryan. I mean, they really. When I knock on doors now, they're not going on about that kind of stuff. Actually. But they are going on about.
Yeah.
Go
ahead.
Can our kids get through third level? Can we get them through third level? Will we have the affordability? Can we get a decent wage at the end of the week? I mean, the Dunnes Stores strike was iconic in a sense in terms of what's happening in a certain sector of our workforce. In terms of a dumbing down in wages, people not being able to get a decent living, and then a bit of exploitation, bullying going on in terms of you shouldn't go on strike, what are you going on strike for, and so on like that. I was genuinely taken back in terms of talking to those workers and saying to myself, this can't go on.
With that in mind, at the coalface then, would you consider bringing Fianna Fáil party to the left, shifting left for the next election?
To the left of centre, yes.
To the left of centre.
I think we have to go back to our roots, which is serving communities. I mean, the communities during this recession have been looking out for each other. I think one of the best things about Irish life is that we do have that capacity to watch out for each other. And particularly watch out for people who are vulnerable. And I found during the medical card, the discretionary medical card dispute of the last 2 years, which we did a lot in opposition to change. But what I found above all, many people who had no medical cards and never had a medical card would say to you on the doorstep, look, the least we can do in a decent society is make sure the young child with chronic illness can get that medical card.
So is that the thing? What would you say is the single most important difference between the Fianna Fáil that drove the country off the cliff and the Fianna Fáil that you lead today?
I think we're going back
to basics?
To basics, and back more to the community.
Okay.
Conscious, what is our role? It's to serve communities.
Isn't that every political party's role?
And also, we were a party that believed in a united community. I get the sense Sinn Féin are very divisive in how they approach it. They want to segment and take from enterprise and so on like that. I think Fine Gael seem to have cornered, they want to corner 25% of the electorate and hope that will get them over the line. I don't believe in that kind of politics. And I think just for basics, if you like, I mean, what drove me in politics from the very beginning, from my own upbringing in my own family, is this sense of no child should be left behind. You know, that pains me when I see kids not making it in life for one reason or another. Likewise, having a roof over your head. I mean, Ryan, right now, there's about nearly 1,000 children in emergency accommodation. That's in hotels across the country. That shouldn't happen, doesn't have to happen. And as a part of a decent society, they should be the priorities.
Can I ask you what Fianna Fáil's problem is with women?
Good question. I think we've had problems in terms of getting more women running for the party. So have other political parties, but we have a particular problem.
No,
we have to change.
Just to give people at home a reminder that Fine Gael have 10 female TDs, and Labour have 7 female TDs, and Sinn Féin have 2 female TDs, and Fianna Fáil have no female TDs.
Absolutely. And
that's quite an indictment, isn't it?
It's wrong. It's terrible. And I'm going to change that.
How? Why is it taking you 4 years?
Well, first of all, we've
had an election first.
We've election first,
and 2 senators.
And we got some great women elected in the local elections. You know, people like Mary Butler in Waterford, Lisa Chambers in Mayo, right across the country.
How are you going to do? How are you going to achieve this figure from 0 upwards? What can you do?
Because luckily, I think the local elections again help us in that regard. Yeah. We have women coming forward. Some have been elected, and some will come forward who haven't been elected.
You need 30%, don't you?
Yes,
that's
the law.
People who don't know,
yeah,
the law from 2012 says that
the law.
Every party has to have 30% of your candidates must be female.
And I think it's a good law, by the way.
Yeah. Would you be able to muster 30% candidates, female candidates?
We will. And we're going to.
You know, it's costly if you don't.
Absolutely.
How much is it going to cost your party if you don't?
It depends how many seats you win. Say you won 40 plus seats, it could be up to $1.5 million, 2 million over a couple of years.
From state funding.
Yeah. And I think, we will get there in terms of women, and I think it's a good thing. And it does force the pace of change, and there will be issues and there are challenges. And I think confidence is one issue, lifestyle is another issue.
Explain that to me.
Well, some women say to me they just don't like the way the Dáil operates or the way a politician's life
So how do you fix that?
I think we need to cop ourselves on in terms of the all-night sittings, for example. It gives an awful image of the party. There was 2 or 3 in the last year where, you remember one famous one up to about 4 in the morning. There's no need for that. And I think many women have said to me, particularly, some who I wanted to become candidates, have said that the lifestyle just doesn't suit me where I am now in my life, is what they would say to you.
And yet there are plenty of women whose lifestyle, they can make it fit
and I think,
parties.
we just mentioned on Leary, we've 3 very good women there now who came through, and that's just one constituency. I'd like to replicate that around the country.
Around the country, okay. Yeah. Let me ask you about, I mentioned the thankless nature of being leader of Fianna Fáil in 2015, and I'm curious to know what motivates you, what keeps you going despite the countless headlines you might read about yourself and your leadership and the party.
I've often thought about that, and I think it goes back really to my upbringing, I think. Fundamentally, I care about the country. I care about how it works. Because as a child, our father was very interested in current affairs. And he had a very challenging childhood, and he grew up and became a bus driver and a boxer and all of that. He was very interested in welfare, and he founded a CI social welfare club to look after widows and orphans with others. But we had to listen to the bloody news every day at 1 o'clock. We come in from school, cabbage and bacon, and the news is on it. Shh. And then you're listening to the news and commentary, and he's commentating on it. And we become very interested in current affairs. And then I go into school and I do the class debates and the teachers. I go into college, I'm in the Students' Union with Joe Duffy and others and so on like that. And I think there is that sense of basic interest in the world around you. And I think that is probably the fundamental motivation. The North was a big catalyst for me early on because our lives were kind of dominated by news from Northern Ireland. When it broke up in 1969, I was 9 years of age. And education. I would have been the first in my family to, we were the first generation to get second-level education, and I would have been the first to go to university. So that sense, and that was part of the Dun O'Malley free second-level education, this huge push to get an education, and now, which all our parents had for us. And so I think that those are the origins, or if you like, the motivating factors behind me still being in politics.
You've been a very public figure for many years now, and you had a deeply sad story, very close to home, which if you're in a position to share with us, you might tell us what happened in your life that it's probably quite hard to talk about, so I don't want to dwell on it necessarily, but it does show that it's not all about the politics.
No, and I suppose many families have gone through terrible tragedies, and we have. We lost Rory in 1999 to a cot death.
How old was he?
He was 5 weeks. it was a terrible moment in our lives, and I always remember, like, we came through, and there's no magic wand. You've got to pick yourself up. You've got to wake up some morning and get out of bed. And I always remember the kids at the time were, I would say, our saviour, because I think Micheál might have been 4 and they were 2 at the time, and you got to get up and get breakfast, and so on. And we came through, and then we were hit with a terrible loss of Lena 4 years ago, which was quite devastating for us, and is very, very difficult to talk about.
What happened to Lena?
Well, I'm not going to go through what happened.
I don't want
Ryan, if you don't mind,
detail,
because
but just in terms of she was very little.
Well, she was 8 years of age, just short on 8 years of age. She had cardiac issues, and things didn't go our way, put it that way. And we lost the light of our lives. She was a beautiful girl, and we loved her very much. And I think, I try, and with the family, we try and celebrate what we had at the time we had with Lena. That's how you try and get through it. You cherish the moments we had together, and you, again, try and pick yourself up. And it's for everybody it's different, and how you deal with grief and bereavement is different. Mm-hmm. But there's one constant in life: you do have to, I think, get up again and engage with life.
It's unimaginable to try and get your head around losing a child, let alone 2, and then having to go out and knock on doors, or at the time, I think you were even running for the leadership of Fianna Fáil, and you have to keep that face out. How do you stay afloat, or keep your head together?
That was a very difficult time.
I can only imagine.
It was very difficult. In terms of it was prior to the last general election,
I remember,
during all the economic upheaval as well. And at one level, in terms of the political decisions that come your way, I remember discussing this with the late Ryan Tubridy.
Yes.
You actually almost have a detached view that you just do what you think is the right thing to do. You're not even thinking of the politics of it, if that makes sense.
It does.
You're not actually thinking about
I understand.
Repercussions. You're saying, look, what needs to be done, let's do it. And there were difficult moments, it's not all plain sailing. And I think you try and carve out space for the private self, and you have the public self. And people are very good. And the community we live in have been very good to us.
Did you ever think of
Our families have been very good to us. I think that has helped us to come through.
Were there any moments where you thought, I'm out, I couldn't bear it anymore, the politics, I just want to go home?
Never quite to that level. I mean, you do get moments when you say, why, and so on, and particularly on a beautiful day like today, and I love West Cork.
Yeah.
You say to yourself,
I'm just thinking, in the middle of all that darkness that you've been describing, did you ever think, life's too short?
But fundamentally then, and I think in life, the sense of purpose in life is important as well. The sense of, you can't just wallow either, I think you have to, again, get back up if you can, and deal with it as best you can, and live life. It's a short life for all of us, relatively speaking, and I think we've got to try and live it to the fullest we possibly can.
You're facing into, if I may change the tone a little bit, and I appreciate you talking like that, but you're heading into the Ardèche next year.
I am.
Next week, excuse me. Yeah. And, then we're into election mode and so forth. Could you ever see yourself as Tánaiste and Micheál Martin to Taoiseach Enda Kenny?
God. No, that's potentially a nightmare scenario.
Potentially your future.
Not at all.
Why not?
Again, you see,
the numbers could crunch that
that's
way.
What easily. I'm intrigued by that. You see, the analysts again are already setting the scene.
Listen, that's the nature
You're
of the game.
Already saying, but I don't think the election might turn out that way.
Well, what way do you think it'll turn out?
Could be the opposite direction.
Okay, so Taoiseach, Micheál Martin.
No, it may not be any of that.
Tánaiste Enda Kenny.
It may not be any of that. I think it will be somewhat fragmented. I acknowledge that. But look at the local elections again. My favourite topic.
Let's watch. No, you're chosen that. But let's imagine the chips fall in such a way that you and Sinn Féin could keep Fine Gael out of power. as a coalition?
We're not going in with Sinn Féin.
Ever?
In any shape or form.
Okay. What's your chief reason for that?
Well, fundamentally, I don't like the way they do politics.
Okay, so that's gone. So,
because well, there's economic issues and all of that.
So that'll never happen.
They're far too uniform. They're a cult-like group in many respects, and you don't get diversity of opinion and so on like that.
So
I think their economic stuff.
Parties a bit
no,
like that,
they're not. I mean, you just discussed my own. It's anything like it doesn't
that
have
could be
the
a discipline issue.
It doesn't have the same discipline at all. And maybe we could do with some of it, maybe, but we don't have that.
But you're not ruling out a Fine Gael coalition.
I think Fine Gael have gone too right-wing for us, and I think the basic. I think where I would like to have the discussion.
You're leaving yourself without options.
Where I would like to have discussions on the issues.
Yeah.
What kind of society do we want?
Okay, and
are we learning anything from the last 5 or 6 years? And what are our values and what kind of sense of decency and dignity do we want to bring back to people's lives? And that's fundamentally my number one priority.
And people will get a flavour of that at the RDES next week.
They will.
It's been good to talk to you. Thanks for coming to see us.
Thank you very much.
Micheál Martin, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Micheál.